You know it. We all know it. All right. Moving on. Republicans have said the quiet part out loud after President Joe Biden canceled some small amount of student loan debt. In fact, you had 19 Republican members of the House of Representatives last week signing a letter to Biden expressing some concern. Oh, there's concern over some of the unintended consequences of the president's plan to cancel about $10,000 to $20,000 in federal student loan debt for borrowers in lower to upper middle income families. Now, the letter counts the GI Bill, which covers all in-state tuition and fees at public colleges and universities, as, quote, some of the most successful recruiting incentives for the U.S. military and a driving factor in many individuals' decisions to join the armed forces. Oh, and said that by forgiving such a wide swath of loans for borrowers, you are removing any leverage the Department of Defense maintained as one of the fastest and easiest ways of paying for higher education. Oh my God, they admit it. Do they understand? Do they understand what they just admitted? What they just said? Yeah, we use the military to, basically reach out to people who are in massive amounts of debt or will take on massive amounts of debt. We target those people to get them to fight our BS wars. And now the Republicans are saying, oh, how dare you destroy our most valuable recruiting tool, which, by the way, this doesn't. Okay. How are you going to convince young people to shoot at brown people overseas if they're not in crippling student loan debt? I mean, that's what's going on. Look, a lot of us already knew this, but understand that I think the majority of the people didn't, or they didn't quite make the connection, right? And look, understand, the military is really good at propaganda. Because generally most people will think, oh, well, of course, the military, the U.S. military, protect us. They're good. And the soldiers that join up, they do so out of love for country, right? Patriotism, right? No, in reality, the military in this country, more often than not, at least in other parts of the world, does more harm than good. Again, look to an example here, and it wasn't always like that, but you had the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that were both incredible debacles, and they did so for no damn reason. There's no reason we should have went in to Iraq. They had nothing to do with 9/11, but it was something that George W. Bush wanted to do. Okay, and in Afghanistan, again, we had no reason to do a literal occupation and then attempt to nation build, because we saw exactly what happened as soon as we left. It went right back to what it used to be, and that's exactly why a lot of us had argued not to go in the first place. This is what's going to happen, debacles. But see, here's the thing, though. A lot of defense contractors got real rich off those wars. So, but again, the country, the population in the United States, we are no safer. And by the way, I'm not saying that this is the fault of the troops. No, of course not. No, what's at fault here is the very incentive structure for what is now the military-industrial complex. It's no longer understand about defending the country. It's about making money. It's about exploitation. It's about militarism and imperialism. That's what we do now. And that's unfortunate. And so, look, the more pointless wars we fight, the more weapons are needed to fight those wars, which is obvious. And the more weapons that are sold, the more certain people make money. While, of course, you do have the people who are fighting these wars that come back scarred mentally and physically. Look, we were warned early on about the military-industrial complex, yet those warnings were not heeded at all whatsoever. So now, that said, there's a time in this country where college was free, or at the very least, incredibly inexpensive, because you had states that covered the costs. I'm going to tie this in a minute here. So that was back in the 1960s, when you had truly, free or affordable college in the United States. Now, back in the 60s, we also had Vietnam. Vietnam, if you can remember, well, they got soldiers through the draft. The draft was very unpopular, especially on college campuses. There were a lot of Vietnam anti-war protests on college campuses. So you had Richard Nixon and, of course, Ronald Reagan, who was governor of California during that time. Well, they decided that, we don't really like the fact that you have these college students that are anti-war, that are turning public sentiment against our war, basically, against, Vietnam. And so, these college students, they're getting uppity, and we think they also might be pro-communist. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try to find a way to shut that down and have people support our war. And what's even better is if we get rid of the draft, we have to have something to replace it, right? But first, we got to get rid of the draft because it's incredibly unpopular and it's actually going to hurt my re-election chances or my election chances, right? So what they did, and again, this started with Ronald Reagan, is that they defunded colleges and universities at the state level. Now, that predictably drove up the prices for students, the costs for students that are now out of pocket. But it's kind of brilliant because the government said, never fear, the GI Bill, we'll pay for it. But all you got to do is sign your life away in the military. Brilliant in its brutality. For one, you make sure by defunding colleges that higher education is unattainable for poor people. Only the wealthy, only the elites get to go to college. That said, if you don't have a draft, who's going to volunteer for the military then? Well, it won't be rich people because they can afford college and they're not going to get drafted. But who's left out? Poor people. Poor people are left out. They can't afford an education. And then they see this beautiful GI Bill and they think, well, goddamn, I want a higher education. I want to go and get out of poverty. I guess I'm going to have to join the military. Oh, look, we got a signing bonus too. Oh, I guess. Aside from a few notable examples, rich people do not join the military because they don't have to. And they don't want to. So, that said, I want to give you some progressive responses to this admission that I think are really, really good. Poet Stefan Muhammad tweeted this, quote, every time I see a politician just come out and say, we can't forgive student debt because we'll lose one of our best military recruiting tools, I have to stop and marvel at the absolute moral repugnance of the sentiment and the audacity of stating it so bluntly. Again, literally admitting it. This is what we're doing. Another person, the group Our Wisconsin Revolution said this on Twitter. The GOP is admitting that the military relies on poor young people to keep the war machine going, and that's why they oppose canceling student debt. The price of a college degree should not be bloodshed or a lifetime of crippling debt. Common Dreams notes that while the Pentagon brass often tout the all-volunteer nature of the U.S. military, critics have noted the poverty draft, which disproportionately affects people of color, is fueled by the student debt crisis, which, by the way, also disproportionately affects people of color. Yes, so you have African Americans, you have black people that take out and have more loans, more student loan debt than their white peers. More student loan debt. And so, oh, look, we'll just, draft them into the military. Now, there's some good news here. And that is, despite record enlistment bonuses, military recruiting is in crisis. According to Army data, up to 70% of potential recruits are disqualified in the first 48 hours due to obesity, low aptitude test scores, or drug use, an increase from previous disqualification rates at 30 to 40%. Now, I say good, not because of the reasons, which are a little disastrous, to be fair, but no, it's good because the military-industrial complex needs to be completely and utterly dismantled. We should not be profiting from war, from death on a mass scale. War should not be a business. War should literally be the last resort. One more point to add here, which is very concerning, and really does kind of counterbalance the other point. According to Common Dreams, during the height of the so-called War on Terror, which was launched in 2001, continues to this day, sadly, the U.S. military made up for recruitment shortfalls by lowering admission standards to allow people with felony convictions, gang members, and racists, but not openly LGBTQ plus aspirants to sign up, resulting in, and this is the disturbing part, widespread infiltration of white supremacists. So, yeah, great, awesome. They also note that deception, falsification of qualifying records, and outright lies were also commonly reported during recruitment by a military when faced with enduring shortfalls, simply extended combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan through compulsory stop-loss orders. And additionally, military recruiters who operate under mottos like first to contact, first to contract, have targeted children as young as 10 years old via pre-junior reserve officers training corps, JROTC and ROTC programs from the elementary school through collegiate levels. I also remember stories where they documented the military running recruitment for children through Twitch streams. So that is also ultimately not good news. But understand that this is what happens when war turns into not defending yourself or defending the country, but into a business for profit.